All right, so we met with a homeowner last week who potentially is the victim of a roofing scam or could be the victim of a roofing scam. So we're going to explain what happened, why this really sounds like a scam, and help you understand how to avoid falling for these common roofing scams. All right, so I said that we met with the homeowner, but it was actually you that met with the homeowner.
Yeah.
This is my son, and he was the one that went out and talked to this homeowner. And this one was kind of an interesting one. So kind of start from the beginning. What was it that tipped the homeowner off that he might be getting scammed?
Well, actually, it was so as one of your videos. You know, he had told me basically that he wishes that he had found us first, but he had already hired a roofer to do the roof, but they didn't do anything.
Well, hired a roofer.
Yeah, true. Well, the next week he called and had been watching through more of our videos and had found the one, or maybe perhaps multiple of the videos that we have about Colorado Law SB 38, which regulates what roofers can and can't do, and what the contracts need to stipulate in them, and what they can do financially, and all that sort of stuff. So at that point, he realized that, you know, it might be a problem that this roofing company has $11,000 of his money and he doesn't have any materials or a date scheduled or anything like that. So that's really kind of where he got concerned and gave me a call.
So big concern was he had given them money.
Yeah.
Over $11,000.
Yeah, 2 separate checks actually, yeah.
So, and then the alarm bells started going off because he saw one of our videos that probably recommended not to give somebody money up front. But the
Correct.
big thing that you had said to me, apart from this video, was why did he give them the money, and what is it that they had him sign?
Well, so the first time that they were out there, they had him sign a document that was basically just a contingency agreement. I know that we have other videos about contingency agreements that I'm sure we can link to, but basically it's just a document that sounds like a piece of legalese that makes the homeowner feel like they're locked in to this roofer. And usually, you know, like in this example, says that the roofer is going to be sort of the beneficiary of the claim itself, and that they're going to be a payee or on the checks that the insurance company sends, and that they're authorized to negotiate with the insurance company, basically, which is another issue. You know, in this document, they said that they were going to be authorized to discuss scope and price of the claim with the insurance company, which they can discuss scope. They're not supposed to discuss price without being a licensed public adjuster. And they actually represented to the homeowner that they had an adjuster multiple times. And I think that what they were referring to was probably a supplementer, because I'm quite certain that they don't have an adjuster on staff. But regardless, so, you know, it was when he saw in our video just that in SB 38, it says that when a roofer collects money up front for a deposit without materials being on site, then the money needs to be in a trust.
And so that whole idea of holding that money in trust is so that the roofer can't collect your money and then use your money to buy materials or pay for labor for a different job. And so roofers typically aren't going to want to, you know, if a roofer's got 20 different jobs in the queue, that would mean he'd have to have 20 separate accounts set up to hold your money in, or to hold the money in for all the homeowners. So that way he's not robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that's exactly what the law is designed to prevent.
Yeah, which is, you know, what I explained to the homeowner, that just because they're taking this deposit up front, you know, I mean, that's obviously a real danger, because a lot of homeowners have had roofing companies just run away. I don't think that that's per se a concern with this company, as they do have an office in town and they have an office in Denver. So that's, you know, they're not from Oklahoma or Texas or something like that, where they're
not that you guys in Oklahoma or Texas are shady.
You know, we're in Colorado, so it's always a concern when you give money to an out-of-state roofer. So my point is just that they are local. You know, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they're just never going to get a roof and never going to get to see that money again. But it is, you know, that was the first thing that I recommended to the homeowner was, Well, your first question to them should be, prove to me that it's in a trust and that it's not, in your business checking account so you can buy the materials for the job you have this week. So, because that's just what happens with a lot of roofers. It's not necessarily that their intent is going to be to rip people off, but they just don't handle their finances well. They've got 3 big truck payments. They've got accounts with multiple suppliers that they may or may not be behind on. There's a lot of bad management reasons why they may need that money as well.
All right, but the document that they signed, that the homeowner signed, was a contingency agreement, not a contract, and that's the key, and that's kind of the crux of where this homeowner could have really gone wrong, and still may end up having gone wrong, because what are the key things that are missing from that contingency agreement?
Well, there's a lot of things, and again, fall back to Colorado Bill SB 38. The first thing that SB 38 says needs to exist in a contract is a scope of material and labor that is going to be provided. Then a few days after they were there initially and had him sign the contingency agreement, they sent him another document for him to sign that they called a color sheet. And basically all that it was a sheet that said what shingle they were installing and what color it was going to be. And then it had a few things under it, like pipe flashings with a remove and replace option circled, and box fence with a remove and replace option circled. But again, there were no measurements, there were no quantities, there was nothing that would actually tell anybody what they intended to do on the roof, outside of, I guess, implying that they were replacing it since they listed a shingle. But so that in and of itself, just not having a scope of work doesn't really qualify it as a contract even under SB 38. And then lower down in their color sheet, they had a section that boiled down to its basic premise was just that they were going to go off of the insurance scope of work, which is, again, not allowed. You have to list your scope of work and materials. You can't just say that you're going to use insurances.
Yeah, and here in Colorado, this is the way the law is written here. Probably different where you live if you're not here in Colorado, but in Colorado, we have to have a price. We have to have a contract. We have to have a price on that contract. We are not allowed here to simply say that we'll do the job per the insurance cost. Okay, no. So now, apart from this, I'm going to call it a fake contract, this worthless piece of paper that would not hold up in court.
Yeah.
Apart from that, what else were they trying to get the homeowner to sign? Well, and he did sign, right?
Well, no, not yet. I talked to him beforehand, and hopefully that, if he does move forward with allowing this company to do his roof, hopefully this works out well. But so the roof in question, the shingles that are on the roof right now were installed in 1998. So it's a pretty old roof already.
Almost 30 years old.
Yeah, and then there's a second layer of shingles underneath that one, which, who knows how old those are. So it's probably been 40 plus years since this roof was ripped off. And meaning
correct,
to
so
the
we
decking.
could see the decking, right?
Which is actually the decking that's on it is maybe 1/2-inch plywood. I could see that from the edges, but actually not having the roof ripped off multiple times is a good thing for the decking, because decking always gets torn up when the roof gets ripped off, and shortens the lifespan of the decking, especially when it's plywood and older plywood. So, walking across the roof, there were some areas that were a little bit soft where I could tell, it's possible that this old plywood may need to be replaced in a few spots. But it is really hard to tell, because 2 layers of shingles actually adds a surprising amount of structural support, or at least apparent support when you're walking across a roof. It can be really hard to tell through multiple layers what the condition of the decking is. Well, they had already told him that it was likely they were going to need to replace the decking on this house.
On the whole
house. Yes, without tearing any shingles off, without doing anything other than what I'm sure that I had done, where they lifted up the shingles and saw the thickness of the decking. and probably saw the permits and realized that it was the original plywood that was originally on the house. But they had said that they were going to need him to sign a change order before they started the job, authorizing the replacement of 170 sheets, or probably just the overlay of 170 sheets of OSB sheeting over his existing roof decking.
And so this document obligates him to them doing that work? Am I understanding that correctly?
Basically it authorizes them to do it, which, you know, if that's the plan, most likely the morning that the job starts, there's going to be 170 sheets of plywood sitting out in the front yard, and
which is not easy to return.
No one's taking 170 sheets back in their pickup.
Right.
So it's most likely going on the roof, whether it needs to or not at that point.
And the homeowner won't know whether it needs to be replaced or not, because he's basically already said, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Correct. It's the kind of thing where, as I explained to the homeowner, yes, if I have the inkling that redecking might be needed, I'm going to send an estimate and say, look, worst case scenario, if we tear this roof off and we have to redo the whole thing, this is what it could cost. But I'm not going to tell you, yeah, go ahead, authorize me to drop 170 sheets in the front yard, right? And probably do it, because that homeowner has no guarantee. One, he has no proof, he has no pictures, he has nothing other than the roofer saying, yeah, it's old decking. He has nothing to go off of to say that it even needs to be done yet. And he has there's nothing as of yet that the homeowner or that the roofers have to show to the insurance company that says that it needs to be done. You know, kind of in conjunction with all this decking, there were a couple other things that the homeowner had asked them to give him quotes for. He had 3 older skylights that you know, he was thinking about whether he wanted to even keep them or not, because you know, they're quite large and they're basically just custom sized plexiglass inside a frame. So we can't, you know, we're not going to be able to get actual real skylights that fit that. So he would have to have some work done and drywall work and everything like that to get to a standard size, or order what would likely be a very expensive custom sized skylight. So you know, he had asked them to give him a quote for taking down an old wooden chimney structure and to delete these 3 skylights. And just to delete the 3 skylights, which is really nothing more than throwing them in the dumpster and putting some probably 9 or 10 sheets of plywood there, they had quoted him $1,900 for that. They had quoted him what came out to about $85 a sheet for the redecking, which, you know,
that's a reasonable price.
It's reasonable. It's a little high, most likely, but you know, it's still a lot of money to try to get someone to commit to when you haven't proved that it needs to be done yet.
Yeah.
And you know, it just kind of goes to, I think, a pattern that we see a lot. You know, something my dad and I have noticed a lot this year is we've been getting underbid significantly on jobs where it just doesn't make sense, right? We all pay approximately the same amount for shingles and labor, and we can just look at it and go, well, why would this roofer do it for this price, right? It just doesn't make any sense.
Because the prices that we know we're getting underbid by don't even cover the cost of materials.
Yeah,
and the key for that is that you as the homeowner might be the one that's on the hook for all those extra costs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they get that off, and you know, I mean, like with decking, you know, a lot of times the only decking that you find that's bad a lot of times is the south-facing slope or something like that. You know,
around a chimney,
the slope that gets, exactly, the slope that gets the hottest, or the slope that, you know, somewhere where some water got in or something like that. A lot of times the north slope might be perfectly fine. The west slope might be, you know, might be trees there. That might be perfectly fine. You know, you might get that roof off and they may only have enough pictures to get the insurance company to pay for a few sheets of repair or for one face of redecking, or, you know, and if you've, like I said, no one's taken 170 sheets back in their pickup truck, you know, that's probably going on the roof. And, you know, at that point, you've lost your leverage as the homeowner. And honestly, the roofing company has kind of lost their leverage as the roofers as well, because the plywood's there, it's installed. If the insurance company says, well, you've only got 10 sheets here in your pictures, we're not paying for more than that. Well, it's done. The homeowner has to pay for the work that was done on their property.
Somebody's going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
The work is done. Somebody's going to have to pay for it, and that's kind of what the roofers are using as leverage against the homeowner. they can't really use it as leverage against an insurance company because technically most policies, what we've experienced, most policies are written such that they're not obligated to pay for replacement of decking. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they're just because your decking is rotted out, that's not a result of the storm. If it's a hailstorm, it's not a result of that. So they're not obligated to pay for that. So if that roofer puts 170 sheets of decking on your house, you might end up having to pay for that.
Yeah, so I had recommended to the homeowner that he tell the roofing company that he understood that this was an estimate in case it needed to be done, but he's not signing it until he has been proven to him that the work needs to be done. And he told them that, and from what I understood, they basically told him, well, we can get insurance to pay for it regardless, which is a pretty big claim. Right? Because yes,
it's a pretty big lie.
Well, yeah, exactly. You can't just tell a homeowner, oh yeah, we can get insurance to pay for that, because you don't know that. You don't know that yet.
Well, and the key to that is that when a roofer is telling you we can get insurance to pay for that, that's a lie. That's just a plain old lie, because especially here in Colorado, roofers are have a habit of telling you, the homeowner, we're insurance claim specialists.
Yeah.
We're not even legally allowed to say that here in Colorado. In other states that have, it's called the UPPA law, the unauthorized practice of public adjusting, those laws govern what a roofer can and can't say. And if a roofer is saying that he's going to be able to get stuff included in your claim and he's not licensed as a public adjuster, he's lying to you. Okay, so that's the big thing. Don't sign those documents. Now, we've got a couple more things to talk about, but I just want to interject right here that this is such an important point. Until you know what's going on your roof, and until you know what's needed to be done on your roof, don't sign any documents, because in most cases, those documents aren't technically going to obligate you to something, but the roofer or the roofing contractor can make you feel like you're obligated. Because a lot of those documents, those contingency documents, say that if you back out of it, they're going to charge you 20 to 25% cancellation fee. Sometimes they call it a restocking fee, even though they're not restocking anything. So what other kind of snares did this homeowner potentially run into?
Well, I mean, I think that, it's kind of like we say, like I think you've probably said in these other videos, and it's like not every roofer that knocks on your door is there to rip you off, but every roofer that's going to rip you off is going to knock on your door, right? Just because, yes, there's a lot of things about this that seem a little suspicious and that aren't, ideal ways of doing business as a roofer, for sure. Doesn't necessarily mean that if the homeowner moves forward with this roofer, that they're going to disappear off the face of the earth and he's not going to get a roof. No, I mean, my guess is that he will probably get a roof if he chooses to move forward with them, right?
Might be an expensive one.
Might be an expensive one, right? And a lot of homeowners maybe don't want to deal with the headache of trying to get out of this and get that money back, and who knows how long that's going to take, what kind of fight, and this homeowner's coming up on the end of their 6-month window for doing the roof. From their insurance company, or from the date that the claim was approved. The insurance company told them they have 6 months, and that's coming up in December. So they've got a few more weeks, and weather's getting cold here. So I don't know that they...
Which is why we're both shivering.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know that they really want to try to, fight for who knows how long to get their money back and all that, and like I said, just because all this, right? Taking that deposit, it could just be that they aren't managing their finances particularly well. It doesn't necessarily mean that that company is going to take off and disappear to Montana and they're not going to get their money back, or that they're not going to get their roof. By all means, I hope that they get their roof. I hope that they're happy with it. I hope that it's installed correctly. But there's just a lot of things that could have gone wrong, right? There's a lot of points where these people could have disappeared with a lot of the money. There's still a lot of potential where they could not do the roof, or they could keep delaying the roof, because they don't have the money to buy the materials because they already spent all the money, or, there's just a lot of things that could possibly have gone wrong. And whether or not it's a company that, you know, maybe your neighbor used them and it went great, or they liked them or whatever, right? Whether or not it seems like the company is good, it's just one of those things where if these practices are in place, whether they are going to run off with your money or not, there's still a pattern of behavior there that is probably concerning, right? And it's still just a, you know, if a company can't manage their finances enough to wait one day to get a check from you,
right,
from the time that materials were dropped off on the roof, who's to say that they're going to be there in 3 months when your roof leaks? You know, it's
right.
just, there's just kind of a pattern there. And so, yeah, is every roofing company doing this? Are they being malicious? Are they trying to rip homeowners off? No, but it also doesn't point to them running their business in a very good or responsible manner.
Okay, so if you want to watch the videos that this other homeowner watched that raised the red flags, I'm going to link to that right here in the middle.